All right, what's good, y'all? I have to do this. I have to do it. You guys know me, and you know that I have to do this. So this one won't be as long as the other live streams, but I do want to address some lies here. I mean, and I don't normally do like reaction videos, but this one warrants it. I want to break this video down, and as you probably already know if you've been watching me on Twitter, Officer Brandon Tatum put out a video yesterday about the Tulsa Massacre, and he basically called it all bullcrap. And he told a bunch of lies in his video. And he didn't just talk about Tulsa; he talked about some other stuff too. But this one I want to take on because a lot of conservatives follow him. A lot of them watch that video, and the people who watch this video were misinformed. Now, the title of this video is that he's lying about the Tulsa Massacre. I'm not sure if he just doesn't know what he's talking about or if he is lying on purpose, but either way, he should have done the research on this instead of just looking for whatever might fit his narrative. So yeah, I'm gonna go with he lied, because to me, I don't see how else you come to some of the conclusions that he comes to. So yeah, I'm just going to skip all the rest of the stuff. But without further ado, I'm going to bring up the video and we can break this down a little bit. Let's see. Look at the comment section of the video. I took a glance at it, but I didn't want to read too much of it because I wanted to. I guarantee you my IQ would have dropped at least 3 or 4 points if I would have read all the comments. So I'm going to go ahead and get it started. Okay. Let me know if you're not able to hear it, but I'm going to play it now.
You can hardly ever trust Black people in the plight of Black people in this country. You can rest assured that you cannot trust what Black people say happened to Black people in this country, to the tune that I'm willing to not believe 90% of people's lies about racism and all these other things. It is now gotten to the point where it is impossible for me to believe Black leaders and the Black struggle in America. I'm almost to the point where I'm willing to deny 90% of what people are saying. Here's why. The Tulsa Massacre. Now, I did a little research. I watched a couple of videos of people explaining it from a historical perspective. I did a little bit of research, watching a few
videos is not research, brother. You got to do more than that. You got to dig. I can guarantee you that Brandon Tatum did not dig into the Tulsa Massacre. He watched it so he can cherry pick certain points that he knew would please his audience. That's my opinion. I can't read his mind, but that is my opinion. I can tell from what he's saying that he did not research. I don't think he does much research at all. And he's not alone in this. I mean, it's a lot of conservative ink types. They don't do a lot of research. They don't do a lot of reading. They just form their opinions based on sound bites. But let's continue.
About the facts and circumstances surrounding the Tulsa massacre that it is today. It was a race riot before, 2018. They turned in, these Black activists and scholars turned it into the massacre of Tulsa. And let me give you.
Okay, that's lie number one. It was always a massacre. They didn't just all of a sudden turn it into a massacre in 2018. The thing about this history is, if you know anything about it, a lot of this was suppressed for years. That's why you see so many people coming out saying, I had no idea that this even happened. People who came up in Tulsa didn't even know know that it happened. This wasn't something that was really taught in schools that much because the local government wanted to start covering it up. So they downplayed it. They made it sound like it wasn't that big of a deal, but people who knew about it knew that this was a massacre. So that's lie number one, debunked.
Some facts real quick. And this is why you cannot believe. In 20 years from now, Black Lives Matter is going to be the new Martin Luther King movement. And nobody's going to correct history. They're going to act like Black Lives Matter changed the world. But let me tell you this real quick, is that in the Tulsa race riot, in the 1921, it was in 1921, so in the 20s, think it was, let's see, June. It was May 31st through June 1st.
Mm-hmm.
It all started because a black kid was on an elevator. He was a shoemaker. He was on an elevator with a white woman.
Yep.
And he was accused of raping her.
Yes, he was.
People could hear her scream from the elevator. They conveniently leave out that it was reported that she had ripped clothes, and he got charged with raping her.
Okay, so what he's trying to imply here is that the black guy may have raped Sarah Page. The black guy's name was Richard Rowland. I think he went by Dick Rowland or Diamond Dick. That was his nickname. Hold the jokes, please. But the 17-year-old girl's name was Sarah Page. She insisted that this man did not rape her. She never wanted to press charges. She said explicitly that he did not rape her. I'll explain that later, but I just want to make that clear because I'm going to bring this up again. What he's trying to imply here is that this could have happened. It's not likely. It's very not likely. What is thought to happen is that as he went into the elevator, because she worked on the elevator, she was like the elevator operator. That's how it worked back then. That he may have tripped or that he may have slipped and accidentally grabbed her shirt or whatever she was wearing, probably a dress. And that was it. As far as the screaming, from what I read, only one person heard it, or one person claims to have heard it, or we're not even sure if there was a scream, because we will see that the way the media covered this, which I believe that the media, and I know I blame everything on the media, but in this case, the way the newspaper handled this was one of the instigators of the riots and of the eventual massacre. They made it sound like this kid was guilty. So let's continue.
And let's go back to what black people say happened and why it is almost implausibility that this actually happened. They are saying, and they want you stupid enough to believe, that he got on the elevator, stepped on her toe, and when she screamed, he was being accused of rape. As if she didn't lament to the fact that he had raped her or done anything nefarious to her. So he got arrested, and
I'm not sure what he tried to say there, but it sounds like he's implying that the woman said that she was raped. She didn't. She never wanted to press charges. And again, she claimed that he did not rape her or even try to rape her.
A black mob of people, residents, showed up to support him, to make sure he wasn't going to get lynched, because they had heard rumors that he was going to get lynched. Some of the black people that showed up was armed. This is the first encounter. This is the first process of people that showed up to the scene.
This is true. So when he was accused of having raped her or tried to rape her, they put him in jail, and there was talk of lynching him. This is how things went down back then. We know this. This was 1921, and this is how sometimes justice was done. So yeah, there was a lot of talk among the white population of lynching this kid. And I believe I read that they had actually killed a Jewish person like a month before. I'm not really sure why, but that was also motivated by bigotry. So we have the black residents of Tulsa, of Greenwood, of Black Wall Street, a lot of whom were World War I veterans. So they knew how to handle themselves. And yes, they came and they were armed and they were going to defend this kid to make sure he got his due process. Nothing wrong with this here. I mean, especially if you value the Second Amendment and you value due process, you value the Constitution, there's absolutely, this is beyond reproach. There's nothing wrong with what they were doing, because they were going to make sure that this didn't just turn into a lynching.
Was black people, some of which were armed, to make sure that the black kid wasn't going to get lynched in Tulsa, Oklahoma, in the district of what they call Black Wall Street. Let's keep going. So in the spirit of these black people doing that, and there were white people who had heard that a black man raped a young girl.
Listen to how he frames that. In the spirit of how they came out and they were armed, these white people heard that a black kid raped a white woman, and now you have armed black men there to defend him. He's subtly indicating that it was these armed black men that showed up that increased the tensions there, that kind of helped to push this more towards violence. when the reality is that they were just there to defend a suspect that was very likely innocent, especially based on the testimony of his alleged victim. But this is what they do. This is what Black Conservative Inc. does. In any situation, the Black person or Black people have to be at fault, more so than whoever's doing something to them.
On an elevator, they showed up. And reports say a shot was fired. The reports doesn't say who shot first. It says the shots were fired. And 10 white people died and 2 Black people died initially.
This is true. He's not lying there. So when the confrontation happened, I mean, you had a crowd of white people, you had a crowd of Black people. Both crowds were armed. It wasn't just the black people. And there was a shot fired, according to witness testimony. They haven't been able to identify which side shot first. It could have been the crowd of white people who were trying to get to Dick Rowland. It could have been a person who was angry in the Black crowd who fired a shot. Maybe somebody got scared. For all we know, the shot could have been fired accidentally. Whatever happened, this is where stuff went down. And in this instance, there were more white casualties than Black casualties. But as you know, this is going to flip pretty soon.
Something of that nature. It was more white people that died than Black people initially. And then when obviously rumors went around that these things had occurred, then more white people showed up and it was a full out BLM. That's what it is. It was a BLM.
This would be such a clever move if it wasn't done by somebody who is so inept at this. He's trying to deflect from what happened by bringing up Black Lives Matter and the riots that happened last year. I've seen some other people trying to do this, but they're not very good at it. And honestly, it's not that great of a move. I mean, I can see what they're trying to do. They want to make it sound like, oh, well, Black Lives Matter rioted last year, so why should we care about Tulsa? Anybody who knows the history knows that it's not the same thing. Black Lives Matter has not massacred like 300 people. And we're going to talk about those numbers in a little bit. But to compare the two is absurd. But they know that a lot of people in their audience already want to believe this. And what's sad is that they trust what people like Tatum say because they actually think he's telling them the truth. They don't realize that they're being lied to. They should be doing their research. I understand they should be listening to a myriad of different commentators to get different points of view. But still, a lot of people, the thing is, I've noticed that a lot of conservatives, not most, I don't think most, because most are pretty receptive to the idea of commemorating what happened and discussing it. They don't like how the left is exploiting it, which I understand because I don't like it either, but they're open to the conversation. But there's still this strain of conservatives where they want to shy away from anything having to do with race or about how race has been treated in this country. They're afraid of the history. I'm not really sure why, but they just don't want to deal with it. I mean, I've had this conversation with other people. I think some of it is just that there are some racist people on the right and they don't want to deal with this stuff. Others, I don't know if they're dealing with white guilt because I like I said, white conservatives deal with white guilt, even whether they admit it or not. It just shows up differently than it does for progressives. For white progressives who are suffering from white guilt, they want to go overboard and virtue signal how much they love Black people and how devastated they are by these things that have happened. And some are sincere and some are not. On the right, though, white conservatives deal with white guilt by pretending that nothing happened or trying to avoid it or getting mad at you, trying to use Black guilt when we want to talk about it. So they want to guilt Black people into not discussing these issues. So there's a lot of guilting going around, right? But the bottom line is we should be able to talk about these things, regardless of how the left handles it. We need to stop being so controlled by the left. If they want to act stupid and try to exploit it, that's their prerogative. We can push back on that, but that doesn't preclude us having honest conversations about these events and the legacy and the impact that they have. This has absolutely nothing to do with Black Lives Matter, and he knows it. Everybody who's trying to make that comparison knows that it doesn't make sense. But again, this is a deflection tactic. They want you thinking about Black Lives Matter and not about Tulsa. The implication is this happened 100 years ago. You need to be focused on what's happening now, as if we can't focus on both. The thing is, they say, well, you can't keep looking back. You got to look forward. No, we have to look back to make sure that we can go forward. I mean, we can't deal with these issues if we don't understand the history. We look back to history to make sure that we don't go back into that history. All right, I'll stop preaching for a second.
It was white people doing what BLM does today. That is, that they felt that it was white people getting done wrong from a black man raping a white girl. They went, a fight broke out, white people died, so white people showed up and burnt the city down. That sounds to me an awful lot like what BLM do today. Yet they are here acting like when white people do it, they call it a massacre of black people.
Black Lives Matter has never burned down a city. That's an exaggeration. On top of that, that wasn't all Black Lives Matter people. Like I've said before, some of these were just thugs who didn't care about George Floyd. They just wanted to get free shit. And you had Antifa, and you had a bunch of different groups involved in this. Even so, they didn't burn down an entire city. They didn't burn down an entire community. They didn't displace 6,000 people and kill up to 300 people. Again, the comparison doesn't work. But for people who aren't going to think critically, it will work, and he knows that.
I don't know who was right and who was wrong in that, but I do know that they're misappropriating facts.
You don't know who was right and who was wrong in that. Okay, so let's break this down. Let's say he's right, and let's say the black kid, Dick Rowland, did rape Sarah Page. Let's say that totally happened, and we know that beyond the shadow of a doubt. Let's even say that when that confrontation happened near the courthouse, that it was a black person from the black crowd who shot a white person and killed him. In that case, you find out who did it, you throw them in jail, or you find out who the people who were involved in that, and you throw them in jail. You don't take a whole posse and massacre up to 300 people and burn businesses. You don't fly planes over a city, which they did, and drop bombs from their planes that they had on people, torching them to death, torching their businesses, and what have you. So even if I give him that, what he seems to believe happened, it still does not justify the response. There is no way to justify it. There's no way to downplay it. There's no way to whitewash it. Let's keep going.
Your boy Joe Biden wrote or tweeted that 300 black people died. That's not confirmed at all. The confirmed numbers were, I think, 36 people died. 36 people died. I think it was 10 white and 15 black. Confirmed.
What he's talking about here, he's being a little misleading. He's not necessarily lying here, but it is misleading. 36 people were confirmed according to the official government account. That means that includes autopsies and that includes death certificates. But I'm going to get into this in a second. It was discovered later that a lot more people died. Just because the government didn't count a certain number of people doesn't mean that they didn't die. I mean, coming from a conservative who already doesn't trust government, I mean, Tatum trusts the government implicitly. I don't care what he says, but I don't. And a lot of conservatives don't just trust what the government says. On top of that, this was 1921. This is like the days of Emmett Till, where a white person could kill a black person and get away with it, where a white woman could accuse a black man of rape and they would believe her beyond the shadow of a doubt. Black guy wouldn't get a fair trial in a lot of these cases. So you can't just automatically assume that just because that's what the local government said they found, that's what actually happened. Because like I said, people investigated this later on, and there's even been some more evidence that came up recently. And I'm going to get to that in a second, but let's keep going.
There is estimates of other numbers from 75 to 300 black people, 75 to 300 estimated, none of which is confirmed. There is none of which can be confirmed, but there was confirmed about, I think it was 20 or 36 people lost their lives in that. And for the longest, it was a race riot. Had nothing to do with a massacre of black people. And then when I was growing up, they taught us that this was white people being mad at black folks because they had Black Wall Street, as if it had something to do with black success and white retaliation of black success. When this weekend, I found out that it had nothing to do with Black Wall Street. And it had everything to do with a black man allegedly raping a white woman and black people coming to his defense and white people coming to her defense, and a fight broke out. And just so happened, white people burnt it down.
He thinks his viewers are naive, or maybe he's just naive. Yeah, people hated the fact that there was a Black Wall Street. This was back in the days of Jim Crow. This is like, these are like former slaves still living. Like, slavery wasn't that long ago at this point. So in that area, I mean, this is in the South, people were very, 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 very racist. That's just the way it was. A lot of white people, the majority of them in a lot of these cities, in a lot of these areas, were virulent racists. It's okay to acknowledge that. That doesn't mean that people living there today are racist, but I'm talking about back then. So in these instances, there are plenty of them where they would trump up charges, or they would make something up to give themselves an excuse to victimize Black people. Like I said, there are several cases of white women making up stories to get a Black man lynched or dragged behind a car, or what have you. So when this story broke in the newspaper the day after the incident happened, that's what got these white folks mad. And now they had an excuse. They can use their fake outrage. And I'm sure that some of them actually believed that this happened, because if you're a racist, you're always going to believe the worst about Black people. So it doesn't make sense to just say that this was purely because of this incident that was reported in the paper, and to act like racism had nothing to do with this. This was 1921. You know it did.
They BLM'd Tulsa, the Tulsa area, whatever they call it, the Black Wall Street. They BLM'd Black Wall Street. That's what happened. Thousands of Black people were displaced, so on and so forth. Now you tell me, explain to me how there's not a BLM massacre where you have Black Lives Matter going around the entire country, terrorizing communities, killing people, bludgeoning people. I mean, you got them.
Again, he's really trying hard. He's trying so hard. I almost feel bad for him. He's trying so hard to link this to Black Lives Matter. By the way, there were people that died in last year's riots. From what I know, there isn't a single murder suspect that was part of the Black Lives Matter organization or part of the Black Lives Matter movement. Again, these were thugs wilding out. Today is the anniversary of David Dorn's death. From all accounts, he was not killed by somebody affiliated with Black Lives Matter. Again, this is what Conservative Inc. does. It's just a lot of the other commentators are better at it. Like Tucker Carlson is very good at making it sound like anybody who says Black Lives Matter is some type of murderous thug who likes to set buildings on fire. But he was not only, the thing about Black Lives Matter is that there's already enough there to criticize without having to pretend that they're just terrorizing the country. That's not what's happening. Anyway, the Tulsa Massacre has absolutely nothing to do with Black Lives Matter. At their worst, Black Lives Matter hasn't done damage to the level of what was done to this community. Let's keep going.
Going around causing terror, billions of dollars of damage, theft, larceny, looting around the entire United States of America. Not just Tulsa, not just Fort Worth, not just Houston, but the entire country. And Black people, not all, because I'm only talking about the illegitimate folks who are
illegitimate folks. Ooh.
The dumb, ignorant, cowardice, brain dead people who I do not like, who are ruining our country on a false narrative. All of this is fake. It's all a false narrative. I went back years ago.
This part is going to get good, but I'm going to take a look at the chat real quick. I shouldn't laugh. I shouldn't be laughing, but damn. Thank you, Brody McFarland, for the super chat. I forgot to mention that if you want to support my work, you can give me a super chat. You can also visit my community, or you can subscribe to my community at afreshperspective.locals.com. I just uploaded a new video that's behind the paywall. It's only $4.99 per month. All right, so let's see what's going on in the chat here. How much is he being paid? I have no idea. I have absolutely no idea. Yes. So Brown Mama, I literally never learned anything about the Tulsa Massacre in school. I also never learned who Malcolm X was until his name came up in an episode in The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. School sucks. Yep. Like, this isn't something like earlier he said that it was in 2018 that they just started pretending that this thing was a massacre when it was really a race riot. No, most people just didn't know about it. I wrote a piece about this last year, I believe, either last year or the year before, because the Republican mayor of Tulsa is trying to get down to the bottom of what happened here. And I wrote about that. I'm going to talk a little bit about it because they're digging, trying to find some of these bodies. But when I wrote that article, a lot of comments, they really appreciated the piece. And I can piss some people off at Red State and get some nasty comments. 99% of them were positive, saying, I never knew that this happened, or I never knew that it was this bad. Most people had no idea it had happened. People from Tulsa who didn't know that this happened. So yeah, I mean, it's coming to light now, as it should. What else we got here? Yeah, I saw that. The Alchemist. There was a linked article to Coach Felicia's tweet today. The article was from a white nationalist site saying that the Tulsa Massacre was Black people's fault. Now, these people know that's not true. I mean, but still, they're trying. They're lying to themselves is what they're doing. They know that nobody believes their bullshit. They're lying to themselves because they want to believe this. Let's see. Deep House Nation, facts. Tatum preached comply, you won't die until that white woman was shot by Capitol Hill security. Their hypocrisy is disgusting. I don't think I listened to what he had to say about Ashley Babbitt. I know, with the Chauvin trial, a lot of people were bringing her up, saying, why don't we have the name of the officer that shot her? Y'all should have been complaining about that when it happened. I think her shooting was unjust. I apply my principles consistently, damn it. Now, a lot of Democrats became back to blue when Ashley Babbitt died. They were basing their opinions on the fact that she was white and that she was a Trump supporter. So her skin color and political affiliation, they supported her death. If that had been Black Lives Matter up there doing that and somebody got shot, they would have a totally different tune. And the same hypocrisy is on the right. But I would love to know how Tatum handled that. I don't know. I don't remember him talking about it, but I don't really pay attention to him like that. So if somebody knows, tell me. What else we got here? You guys are funny. Let's see. I thought justice is a tenet of conservatism, the ability to petition. Yeah, to actual conservatives. But the problem is that a lot of our commentators aren't actual conservatives. They're conservatives when it benefits them and benefits the narrative that they want to spin. Did I just read the title of the video that Tulsa was a lie? Yes, you read that right. Tulsa Massacre was a big lie. That's what this dude is saying. Freaking Julian, dude. Had to be honorable defenders of a pretty white girl. Yeah, they defended her even when she didn't need it. Even when she said nothing happened. Let's see. What Brandon is saying, he hates Black people with a passion. You might think that. I couldn't possibly comment. Let's see. You guys got a lot to say. I can only, this is AJC, I can't pronounce it, AJCA train. I can only influence my in real life sphere. And when they start that talking points BS, I send them to the Black conscious conservatives. That's where you should be sending them. Awesome. Great. The Alchemist. I don't even mind tap dancing as long as you use the money to help a community that needs it. I guess I can't have a problem with that. Okay, I'm going to continue. Give me a second.
I went back to look at slavery, to reevaluate slavery, because I see the lies and the manipulation from the media.
Wait a minute. Wait, why did you just all of a sudden go back to look at slavery? He's about to use some talking points here. And he didn't just realize this stuff. So, I mean, I don't care what he's saying. He just went back to do some research on slavery. No, you didn't, nigga. No, you didn't.
Black leaders in this brain dead society that we live in, called Black America. And the first legal slave owner was a black man. It blew my mind. How could it be so?
Nigga, they've been using this talking point for decades, and you're just now finding out? That's a little suspect. I mean, you're supposed to be conservative, Black Conservative Inc. You're supposed to know this stuff. You're supposed to have that talking point memorized. So either you already knew that and you're just breaking it out now, or maybe you just haven't read your manual. I don't know. Yes, the first registered slave owner was a black man, Anthony Johnson. Everybody knows about it. The right loves to talk about this guy. And I'm not sure what point they think they're making, because everybody acknowledges that there were black people who owned black slaves. Everybody knows that. Well, I'll say black people know that. We know that. And then a lot of white people do too. This isn't some revelation. This is not a bombshell. But what they tried, and it's such a weak argument. And I'm surprised that people actually go with this, because it's so easy to dismantle. They say the first first slave owner was a black person. Okay, and what happened after? What they're trying to do, and he's going to do it in a second. Actually, I'm going to let him do it, and then I'll comment on it.
That black man went to court. Anthony Johnson, look it up. That the black man went to court, won a lawsuit to own other black people. So you're telling me a white judge granted him ownership of two other black people as a black man in the 1600s, respected enough to go to court and have a voice in court to win the rights to own other black people for the rest of their lives. And then I went to research other.
So what point is he trying to make here? Like, how is this relevant? Now, it'd be one thing if he were just talking about it as something that was interesting. That's an interesting fact. I mean, it's interesting that black people owned slaves, and that the first slave owner, at least legal slave owner, was a black person. That is an interesting tidbit. It doesn't prove anything. What they try to do is they try to make it sound like, oh, there were just tons and tons of black slave owners. There was a number of them, but by no means did they come anywhere close to being the majority. The vast majority of slave owners were white in America. The vast majority of American slaves were black. That's it. There is absolutely no way to get around that, but they still try.
Other people, which Anthony Johnson was a very successful, wealthy black man at the time. And as you go through the 1600s, 1700s, 1800s, you see that there's a tremendous amount of black men who own slaves, who own other black people. Hundreds of black people own slaves. Hundreds.
I didn't get a chance to dig into that, but I do not think it was hundreds and hundreds of people who owned hundreds and hundreds of slaves. He's exaggerating. He's definitely exaggerating that number.
So black men own hundreds of black slaves during slavery. And another thing I found out that blew my mind, I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, crazy.
I went through and looked at the slave states and looked at the free states. And it was the exact same amount of free states as there were slave states.
No.
And then I did more research and I said, what percentage of white people own slaves? I thought it was 90%. It's like, the numbers are varied in different research that I've seen. But
I've watched this twice and I can't stop laughing at this. You didn't think it was 90% of white people? No, there's no way. Please lie to me and tell me you didn't think that. Nobody thinks it was 90% of white people. Not even 90% of white people in the South. Now, I agree that people probably think it's more than what it was. I get that. But 90%? Come on, homie. Come on, dude. Let's get serious.
I've seen numbers. 6% is almost the highest number I've seen of white ownership of slaves in the South. 6%.
That's true.
So you're telling me 94% plus of white people didn't even own slaves?
No, yeah.
But yet our entire plight of the black community is because of slavery. Look at the 1920s and 30s when Black Wall Street was around.
Oh, now you want to boast about black people. Now you want to boast about black people because you want to diminish what slavery did. That's why you want to diminish or talk about Black Wall Street. This isn't history that you would just tell your audience. You don't focus on the good things that black people do unless it somehow fits the narrative that black people are bad. See, here's the thing. He's not lying about that. I think it's about 6%. I think I've heard anywhere between 6 and 10%. Bottom line is, it wasn't the majority of white slave owners. Nobody's making that claim. Here's the thing. It wasn't just the fact that people owned slaves. It's the fact that people contributed to slavery. If you use a slave to pick cotton, for instance, and you sell that to the North is paying you, and they are supporting what you are doing. So the majority of the nation at that time was supporting slavery. Even if they didn't agree, maybe I'm sure a lot of those people didn't agree with it, especially in the North, but that is how it happened. There is trade between the North and the South, and within the South, and all that. So the people who did own slaves were selling to people who were profiting off of slave labor. It's just like, we have this controversy with Nike, right? Using slave labor in China and in other countries. We're not the ones enslaving them, but we are contributing to it, aren't we? We're supporting it, aren't we? If we're buying certain shoes. I'm not going to get into a philosophical conversation about Nike. Not a fan. I don't buy their stuff. I think I've only owned like 1 or 2 pairs of Nike shoes that I can remember, but I just stopped buying from them. But I digress. It's not the issue isn't that 6% of white people in the South own slaves. The issue is that slavery was a thing in the first place. If I were to look up abortion rates and find out that, actually, let me see if I can find that right now. Let's see. Let's see. Let's do a little experiment. What percentage of mothers abort their children? Let's see. Hopefully I can find this easily. All right. Come on. Okay. According to the Guttmacher Institute, and this article was written in 2020, 18% of pregnancies ended in abortion in 2017. Okay, well, I mean, that's not most mothers. I mean, most mothers are having their children, so therefore abortion shouldn't be a big issue, right? 18%, I mean, that's a huge chunk, but still, should we really be worried about abortion because it's such a low percentage? It's not even a quarter of that population. What is that? Do you think that Brandon Tatum would say, yeah, we should ignore abortion, or we shouldn't talk about abortion, or we shouldn't deal with it or see it as evil because most mothers aren't doing it? Of course not. It doesn't matter how many people actually physically own slaves. A lot of these people were wealthy and rich or what have you. And there were a lot of people who just owned 1 or 2 slaves. So there's a dichotomy there, but still, it does not justify it. It was still an evil, evil thing that most of the country contributed to. So you can't downplay it just by saying, oh, it was just 6% of people in the South. All right, let's keep going.
Single family homes were taboo. You talk about 20% single parent rate. Now it's 70%.
Not true. They love that stat. Now, before I say this, I will say that when it comes to the fatherlessness rate in the Black community, it is too high. Even the way, no matter way you slice it, it is too high, and that needs to be addressed. And there are a lot of different factors that contributed to that somebody like Brandon Tatum will never talk about honestly. They think it's just because of welfare. They won't talk about the other factors that led to that reality. He's saying 70%. What the stat is, if it's accurate, it's saying 70% of Black children are born out of wedlock. That's all it tells you. So you can't assume that statistic is telling you anything more than that 70% of Black children are born out of wedlock. So this does not tell you how many Black parents get married after having their children. This does not tell you how many may not be married, but they're still together, living in the same home. It doesn't account for any of that. When you do, according to the census of 2018, the number goes down to about, I've seen between 40%. The highest I've seen was close to 50%. Still way too high, but it's not nearly as insurmountable as 75% that a lot of people on the right claim. It's already bad enough. We don't have to exaggerate it. We don't have to lie about it. But let's continue.
Black people were successful. They were working hard. They were getting their stuff done. They were building things. They were building their own arenas, They were building railroads. They had jobs. They had careers. There was quote unquote Black Wall Street.
And what happened to Black Wall Street? What happened when Black people built? It didn't just crumble all on its own. The government began implementing policies that were specifically designed, like I always say, specifically designed to put white people ahead of Black people. You think that the government liked seeing Black people build? No, they had to do something about it. So what did? They did Jim Crow. They did redlining. They prevented Black veterans from taking advantage of the GI Bill. Black people couldn't buy homes as easily. They used infrastructure to keep Black people down. So, and again, I'm not saying that everything's racist now. I'm not going all, Ibram X. Kendi on you. I'm just saying this is what happened in the past. It still has an impact today.
Concentration of Black success and wealth in the 20s and 30s that we don't even see today after the Civil Rights Movement. I'm starting to become skeptical of the Civil Rights Movement and say, is the Civil Rights Movement have a little bit of BLM in it to where we are not told the entire truth?
Everything is BLM. The Tulsa Massacre, they did a BLM. The Civil Rights Movement, they did a BLM. This whole video is a BM
of the Civil Rights Movement. Are we just told what Martin Luther King said on one speech? Because Martin Luther King was a socialist. Martin Luther King was a socialist.
That's a fact.
Okay.
Or a factual.
He had some conservative principles. He was a socialist.
MLK was very much into democratic socialism. I'm not sure that he was a full out and out socialist, but he definitely leaned heavily in that direction. It does not take away from a single thing that he did. It does not. Let's keep going.
However, those are things that I did not agree with Martin Luther King on. Now, are we just hearing his one speech and people are glorifying his one speach?
Yeah,
like
conservatives are.
BLM?
Actually, I take that back. Conservatives don't, honor the entire I Have a Dream speech. They just take that one section that they really like and use it to pretend that MLK didn't want people to see color or that he didn't want people to acknowledge ethnicity or what have you. So, yeah, he's right there, but probably not in the way that he thinks he is.
Did more. Rodney King. Rodney King was another one.
Rodney King.
When I got to the police academy, I realized that Rodney King wasn't who I thought he was, and the situation wasn't what I thought it was. I did not know that Rodney King beat a female officer almost to the point of death.
Oh.
And then took cops on a high-speed chase.
So I looked this up. I looked for this. I did all the research I could. I cannot find what the hell he's talking about. He's either making that up or somebody else made it up and then told him that, and he believed it. I cannot find a single story of Rodney King beating up a female police officer. The way the story goes is they caught him acting a little funny when he was driving. And since he had already been arrested for robbery, he knew that driving under the influence would get him back in jail. So that's why he led them on a high-speed chase. Now, a lot of people will say, oh, he had PCP in his system, which made him superhuman, which justified the beating. That's not true. There was not a single trace of PCP in his system. Now, he might have been high on something else. He may have been drunk or what have you. Either way, I cannot find any evidence that Rodney King assaulted a female police officer before this chase. If somebody else manages to find it, please send it to me. I'd love to have it, because I even when I was a kid hearing about this, I never heard anything about that. And I seriously doubt, especially back then, they weren't going to cover this stuff up. I mean, the media wasn't all that friendly to Black people back then. Like, and they still aren't, but they at least pretend to be now. Back then, they didn't even pretend.
And then I went back in the context of that whole scenario. I saw them hitting him with a baton. Rodney King never complied. He never complied.
Okay.
The problem is when you're beating a person with a baton and they don't comply and you keep beating them, it don't look right. And to a certain degree,
it doesn't look right because it's not right. That's like saying if I go and hit a 10-year-old kid with a baseball bat, you say, man, that really doesn't look right. No, it's not right. God, man.
You have to do something different. You're just beating a man for no, you're getting down the street or beating a man for no reason. However, It was in no way, form, or fashion do I think that that was racist. In no form or fashion do I think that he didn't deserve to get beat initially.
I was a kid when this happened, and I would hear stories all the time about black people getting the crap beaten out of them by the LAPD, which was found to be very racist in their practices. It's a fact. They have made changes since then. Some might argue that they haven't all the way changed, but it's not the same department now that it was back then. Back then, it was a huge, huge problem with racist cops that were, I mean, not like straight up racist, like dropping N-bombs and specifically targeting black people. I mean, remember, this is, you know, when that war on drugs was still going on, and it's still going on, but it was much worse back then. People were getting the crap kicked out of them by the cops all the time, mostly black people. You didn't hear this happen with white people a whole heck of a lot. So yeah, there was some racial bias there. I mean, with some of the cases that we see today, you might be able to make that case. Maybe. But back then, no. All right, let's keep on.
He took him on a high-speed chase. The same Rodney King mentality is what...
Yeah, really quick. Yeah, Julian, you told us this story. You were pulled out of your car in LA while you were on active duty. And I'm guessing that this wasn't even back in the 90s. This was a lot more recent than that. So LAPD has some issues. Anybody who knows the situation knows that they've got issues. All right, let's keep going.
What we see from the black community even now. Rodney King is a Philando Castile, is a Eric Garner, is a Jacob Blake, is a Breonna Taylor. Rodney King is the same thing that they're doing today. Rodney King was a criminal, and they beat him too long, but he deserved to get his butt beat. They
beat him too long, and he deserved to get his butt beat. No, you're not supposed to beat on a suspect unless they are a threat. An officer cannot beat somebody up just for resisting arrest. If they are a threat, if they're trying to punch and kick or what have you, then officers got to do what they got to do. But Rodney King wasn't doing that. Now, he was resisting. I mean, I'm not going to pretend like he wasn't. He was resisting arrest, yes. They had 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 officers there. They could have subdued him. That's why they tried to use that PCP excuse. Oh, he had superhuman strength. No, he didn't. No, I'm not seeing that. You had, and back in those days, they don't use these weapons anymore, but they used to have those PR-24s. If you were born in the 80s, you know what I'm talking about. They had those nightsticks, and those things are like these thick wooden batons, and they would just lay into you. And if you watch the video, they're just beating the crap out of him. Like he had broken bones, broken leg, broken arm, broken everything. They broke his body. It was bad. There was no way to say that he did not deserve all that. I'm sorry. I don't care if he had just robbed somebody and took their wallet and ran away. He didn't deserve all that. It's hard to imagine what somebody would have to do to deserve that. I mean, I'm talking about like you did that to somebody else, and now you deserve to have that happen to you. He did nothing that was on par with that. Resisting arrest does not warrant that type of treatment.
Deserve to be in jail for beating up that police officer, almost killing her, a female police officer, beating a woman almost to death.
Yeah, the made-up police officer.
King was a criminal, just like the rest of these thugs. And we are brainwashing people into believing a history that never happened. That Tulsa Massacre is bullcrap. That's not what happened. And the thing that bothers me the most is black people in America, most of them cannot be fair about anything.
Yeah. It's genetic.
The culture cannot be fair.
Yeah, black culture, man. You got to watch that black culture. It is never fair, dude. It is always unfair. It can't be fair at all. If your skin is, if you've got melanin, you're not a fair person. Damn.
They can't be fair about anything. They can't tell the truth that Rodney King was a POS and he's not a representation of black people. However,
he has yet to name anybody who said that Rodney King is a representation of black people and that he was a saint. Nobody was saying that. Nobody. They were saying that he didn't deserve what he got.
Beat him too long. They can't say that. He has to become a god.
Where did Rodney King become a god? You know, it's like they make this shit up as they go along, and then they convince themselves. If I were to ask him who was acting like Rodney King was a god, he's not going to be able to tell me. He won't be able to tell you. He makes this stuff up for his audience. He's trying to convince them that the black community idolized Rodney King as a god. No, they were pissed off about what happened to him. And rightly so.
They can't say that George Floyd did not deserve to die, that it was wrong that he died. But George Floyd was a POS. He had no business being represented in the black community. He is not going to get a casket and a golden casket, a funeral and murals and remembrance of the day he died.
So you're more mad about what George Floyd did than what Chauvin did. That's my problem with these people. That's my problem with Black Conservative Inc. right there. They think that what George Floyd did is worse than what Derek Chauvin did. He was a man in uniform, a government official who had been given the authority to violate people's rights when he thought it necessary. He thinks that Chauvin should not have been held to a higher standard, and he killed somebody. That's it, flat out. He killed somebody. And I don't want to hear all about, no, it was an overdose. That's bullshit, and you know it. Chauvin killed Floyd. Now, you can disagree on whether he deserved second-degree murder or whatever. I don't care. That's what happened. That is worse than being strung out on fentanyl. That is actually worse than him robbing that pregnant woman. He ended a life. But we're supposed to be more concerned about what George Floyd did. George Floyd, at that point in his life, he was hooked on drugs because of back pain. He didn't just become a druggie because he liked to do drugs. He had serious back pain, him and his girlfriend. So he ended up getting hooked on fentanyl. It was not intentional. The tens and thousands, hundreds of thousands of Americans suffer from the same thing. They deal with the same thing. And when they're white, we don't have a problem with it. We feel sorry for them. But George Floyd doesn't deserve that level of sympathy. And I don't want to hear about the counterfeit $20 bill. 90% of the time, people don't even know they have a counterfeit bill. There's no evidence that he was involved in a counterfeit operation. So you can't even say that he was in the middle of committing a crime because he likely didn't even know that the bill was counterfeit. So you can miss me with that. Take several seats.
That joke is a POS, ruining the black community almost every year of his life. And all of a sudden,
George Floyd was ruining the black community every day of his life. Listen to this guy. Listen to this. There's a reason why I don't do these reaction videos very often. Maybe I should do them more often. Maybe I should do them more. Because a lot of times you guys don't seem like you believe me when I talk about Conservative Inc. This is evidence right here. He has contempt for this guy. And I don't believe for a second it's because of his criminal history. I think it's because of the color of his skin. And yes, there are black people who have a disdainful view towards other black people. I've seen them. And you know what? Let's keep going because you're going to see something.
He becomes a god. Jacob Blake. They got Jacob Blake on the helmets of football teams. Jacob Blake raped a woman. Well, he sexually assaulted a woman. Did digital penetration. I mean, he assaulted her with his hand, digitally with his fingers, whatever you want to call it. He was zone restricted from his baby mama's house in this whole city. Mm-hmm. Yet he showed up in the city with a knife in his hand and fought the police and got shot. And y'all worshiping him like he's a god.
Who's worshiping Jacob Blake? There are people who disagreed with the way he got shot. Now, it sounds like he did commit those crimes, and he is a piece of shit if he did that. Yeah. Two things can be true at once. Jacob Blake may have been a POS, and the officers could have been wrong to shoot him. Now, in this particular instance, I am actually not as hard on the police officers. I think that there were some things that they probably could have done to handle it differently. The dude had a knife. And from their impression, when they rolled up, the female that was there was saying, he's going to take off with my kids, yada, yada, yada. I can kind of understand why the police did what they did. I wish they would have been able to take him down before he got to the other side of the car. But at the same time, I can't come down as hard on them in this instance because I don't know what I would have done. This one wasn't as clear cut, and it's not getting as much attention because Jacob Blake lived. And by the way, Jacob Blake admitted that he had a knife and that he shouldn't have had it. Whatever.
I will never understand the black community. And,
that's for sure.
And I have grown a slight disdain for some parts of Black culture.
It's very interesting because he has made blanket statements about the Black community all the time. It's very interesting that he's kind of couching it in these terms, a slight disdain for some parts of Black culture. You did a whole video about how white women are better than Black women, bro. This isn't a slight disdain. Like you disdain Black people. And the thing is, and that's why I said a while ago, this is what I'm talking about. There are a lot of Black conservatives who want to be seen as the good ones. And they do this by disparaging their own culture or their own people. They are the exact same as white progressives who like to bash white people. White progressives who like to bash white people are very much have a lot in common with Black conservatives who like to bash Black people. Let's say like Candace Owens and Robin DiAngelo, they're the same person, two sides of the same coin. Throw Brandon Tatum in there with them. And people may not like me saying that, but you can't say I'm wrong because there are these people who do this. Now, I don't think that Brandon Tatum hates all Black people. I'm not going all like that. I'm not. He's not the Black KKK guy from Chappelle Show. He's not Clayton Bigsby. I'm not going that far. I don't do that. But what I can see from what he says is he does have a disdain for the Black community and for Black culture. I'm not sure how much how in touch he is with other Black people. But I do think that he misleads his audience about what Black culture is. He will say that certain things represent Black culture when they really don't, if you actually think critically about it. Let's keep going.
That's degenerate. It's sickening. It's nasty. It's ugly.
Nasty.
It's counterproductive. It's un-American. It's no place in America for these dirty, dog-like people. Yeah, I said it.
Yeah, you said
There's a lot of good Black people in this world. A lot of them I know. A lot of them are successful right now. But then there's a dirty, nasty part of Black culture that is of the devil.
Woo!
And it starts with
Satan spawn.
These Black leaders who lead these cities into turmoil. Black leaders who lead culture into turmoil. People like Jay-Z and what's the boy that play basketball? LeBron James. They are all detriments to the Black community.
That's his phone, by the way, not mine.
They're a detriment. And the reason why they're more of a detriment than a thug hanging out on the side of the street is because they have a platform. They are sheeps. They're wolves in sheep's clothing, meaning that they present themselves well. They're very successful. So then they get influenced. And once they get influenced, they throw you off a cliff.
So he talked about Jay-Z and LeBron James. Now, LeBron James, for all his faults, has done far more for the Black community than Brandon Tatum has. So has Jay-Z. Jay-Z doesn't seem to be very political. I think he says something every now and then, but LeBron James weighs in and he says a lot of stupid shit. LeBron James does. I think that for the most part, his heart is in the right place. I don't think that he's trying to hurt anybody. Who was a Kwame Brown was talking about it too. But I mean, LeBron James has invested in a school, I believe in was it Baltimore or Chicago? I can't remember. Either way, he invested in a school for disadvantaged children, most of whom were Black. I know that he uses his wealth to give back to his community. I respect the hell out of that. I can disagree with LeBron James' stupid tweets, especially about the one, what was it, with the Ma'Khia Bryant shooting. He posted that tweet and it was ridiculous. I wrote about it and I criticized him. And I will criticize him again when he says something stupid. I've actually written an article that praised him when he was having a conversation about race. I defended him because he was having that show that he had on HBO that was at the barbershop or what have you. It was like in 2018, 2017. And he talked about how he had a resentment towards white people as a kid. But then when he went to a different private school where there were more white kids, he began to lose a lot of those attitudes. And a lot of conservatives were being reactionaries, not paying attention to what was being said. And they were attacking for us, saying, oh, he's a racist. Now, they were only saying that he was racist because he didn't like Trump. I mean, he'd gone back and forth with Trump. And that's the only reason why they thought that LeBron James was racist after he made those comments. They didn't bother to read the rest of it. He said, this was my attitude for a while, and then I changed it. That should be something that white conservatives and black conservatives would celebrate, but they didn't because they wanted to be reactionary. But I digress. LeBron James has done far more for the black community than Brandon Tatum has, than I have. He has the money to do it, and he has used it in that way, and I will give that to him, and I will shout that out because that's awesome.
There was no reason in the world that LeBron James should be complaining about anything in this country. He should be telling you how to be successful. He should be telling you how to stay married.
You know what? I actually agree with that. Kwame Brown called that out too. I think he might have gotten that from Kwame Brown. From what I've seen, and this could be wrong, but I don't keep up with him like that. But I think that LeBron could do more if he could teach young black men how he amassed his wealth. I mean, I know a lot of it was through basketball, and not everybody's going to play basketball. But what about helping them learn about entrepreneurship or about his family life, like how he makes it work with his wife? He could be doing more stuff like that. And I agree with that. But that still does not take away from what he has done and is doing. Again, I'm not going to knock that. I think nobody is perfect. Everybody could be doing better, right? So I'm not going to condemn him.
He should be telling you how to be a father, how to be a leader, how to work hard, how to persevere. Those are things that LeBron James should be saying, but he's not saying those things. He's telling you how to be a victim. And as he's successful and he's got 3 or 4 houses that some of y'all would die to have, he ain't gonna tell you how he did it. He's not gonna talk about real estate. He's not gonna talk about investment opportunities. He's not gonna do that. He's not gonna spend his own money and partner with other basketball players to actually own a school.
He's already been doing that. He's already got other projects. And let's be honest here. Even if he was doing all of that, you wouldn't care. Black Conservative Inc. does not care about the good that black men do. So LeBron James could have been doing all of those things, and you guys would still hate on him because he didn't like Trump. He doesn't agree with you politically. And I'll admit he says stupid shit on Twitter. So you're always going to find a reason to hate on him. Like, I don't take this seriously. Brandon Tatum, and I'm not just talking about him. I'm talking about Conservative Inc. as a whole. I don't take them seriously because they're not serious about it. If LeBron James had done all of those things, they would just try to find something else to criticize him about because this has nothing to do with benefiting the black community.
He white labeling the school. He don't own that school. The school district picked the teachers. The school district picked the curriculum. He don't own that school. He just put his name on it. And then the city has the burden. Once they meet a threshold of students, the city then take over the tax burden. He's absolved of it. That poor city is going to have to pay for that school he created. And when
that poor city that he gave millions of dollars to, oh, that's so horrible. Whew.
When him, all of these big time millionaires, they have the ability to help the black community and make a difference, and they don't. But anyway, that's enough. I've said enough. I think I made my statement very clear.
Well,
that these people are detriments, and I'm sick of them lying. Go do your own research. Look at the truth. Quit judging people by the color of their skin and judging by the content of their character. And there's good people in every race. There's bad people in every race. And if you can't get that through your head, then you a loser, and you ain't never gonna make it nowhere in life. You ain't gonna make it.
All right, yeah, that's enough of that madness. But you guys see what I'm talking about now? This is what your influencers are doing. This is what they're teaching their audiences. And what's sad, that video has over 100,000 views. So that's almost 100,000 people who have been misinformed about the Tulsa Massacre. He just set things back by convincing his audience that the Tulsa Massacre wasn't that big of a deal and may have possibly even been the fault of black people. That was his objective, and he accomplished that. That's what people like me are up against. Now, someday my platform will be that big, but still, we need more because they are going to keep lying to you. They're not going to stop. They have no incentive to stop. Let me go ahead and look at these chats here. I got some super chats. Let's see. Thank you, Julian. So we have Tandem Bradum. Baba Luba is Uncle Ruckus. If only blacks would have just been happy and accepted beating. You know, that reminds me. A lot of people are like putting out this trope that if a black America were its own nation, it'd be like the richest black nation in the world. Okay, yeah, so we're just supposed to accept the wealth disparities and right? Okay. Like, Again, that's an interesting fact. That is interesting, but it by no means means that we shouldn't be fighting for more, right? Because if we were the other way around, they'd be wanting to fight for more, and there's nothing wrong with it. Thanks again for the super chat, Julian. Another one. Rouse the mob against Jay-Z and the rappers and LeBron. What mob? The Conservative Inc. mob? What are they going to do? Go up to him and start quoting crime statistics? Man, you guys have a lot to say. Okay. Mrs. Pinky. Yeah, people are still alive who are related to the victims of the massacre. Yep. Yeah. It's 100 years, and that sounds like a long time. It's not that long. It's not that long. It's not that long ago. There are some people who were there. And they're very old now. They're over 100, but still, it wasn't that long ago when you look at the course of history. Let's see. What else we got here? Oh, wow. I'm a grown-ass woman, and yes, we was beat down in L.A. County, born 1960. Yep, you know what I'm talking about then, sis. JMO, you're just reacting with disbelief here. He just said they deserved it. OMG. He said that shit out loud. Yes, that's what I've been telling you guys. Excuse me. It's not just JLP. It's not just Candace Owens. That's why I try not to focus on her too much, because it's not just her. It's a lot of them. And I don't like to just list off names, but you guys know by now. Officer Tater Tot sounds like a thug to me. Come on now. Don't call him Tater Tot. What else we got? Okay, this is an interesting point. Resonant truth. So many Black conservatives are apologists for white supremacy when they could be educating white conservatives about the impact of racism on Black people and on society in general. Yes. And the thing is, Black conservatives should be the one having the sensible conversations. Like, Black conservatives don't need to go like Black progressives do and pretend that racism is everywhere and that neo-Nazi cops are just waiting to hunt Black people down in the street. Yeah, they exaggerated. That's what they do. But that doesn't mean we have to go to the extreme opposite. We can acknowledge the impact of racism and have actual solutions for it. But the problem is that the Black Conservative Inc., they pander to the reactionary streak on the right. So they have to always go to the exact opposite of whatever the left says. And it's tragic, because that means that the problems don't get solved. We've already seen that the left doesn't want to solve the problem. They want to use it. So they're not doing much about it. We could be doing something about it if we actually took it seriously. Oh, that's a good point, Mrs. Pinky. He totally lost his point over Tulsa. He ignored Tulsa cops, gave guns to whites in the mobs. Yep. That is true. The cops were in on it. I forgot about that part. Yeah. Yeah, we never deified Rodney. No, we sure as hell didn't. Nobody did. Even though I was a kid, I remember. I was 11 years old. Nobody was deifying Rodney. Now, did he become a symbol? Yes. And that's what happens. Just like George Floyd became a symbol. Nobody is saying that George Floyd is a saint. Like, that's a refrain you hear on the right so often. None of them can really prove it, but nobody's like, all of the lavish stuff, like the golden coffin and what have you. That's not because people think he was an angel. It's because the way he died was so very wrong, and it was so very public. He became a symbol. That's how it works. Yeah, and he brought up Eric Garner and Philando Castile. Eric Garner, that shouldn't have ever happened. That was because of a bullshit law, like you said, Mrs. Pinky. There's absolutely no reason that a law should have existed that would have allowed those cops to do what they did. He was selling loose cigarettes. Who cares? Philando Castile was actually obeying what he was supposed to do. He told the officer that he had a gun. He was a legal gun owner, got shot to death, and the officer got off. So I'm guessing that B. Tatum probably loves Biden's 94 crime bill and Kamala Harris's record as a prosecutor. That's probably the only thing that he likes about Biden and Kamala Harris. What else we got? Fernando Hayward. Does he hate his mama? I guess she's black. Maybe he hates her. No, he said he likes some black people, so maybe that just includes his family. How many schools did Brandon open? See, that's the thing. I mean, LeBron James has his faults, but you can't admit, you can't deny that he's done things for the black community. Paul Bryant. Him, Jesse Lee Peterson, Candace Owens, and Larry Elder are all descendants of Stephen from Django. Come on. Man, you guys know you're wrong. I mean, and I said it yesterday. I mean, to be serious about it, I mean, some of the people who get called Uncle Toms and Coons and all that stuff, I don't think that they all deserve it, but there are some who do. They bring it on themselves. I still disagree with using those terms. I'm not a fan. If I'm going to rail against people using Democratic plantation, then I got to do the same with Uncle Tom as well. But I'm not going to pretend like some of these people don't bring it on themselves, like blatantly bring it on themselves. When you try to downplay a massacre that happened. Oh, I didn't even get to that part, actually, when he was talking about how it was only maybe 35, 36 people. Again, that's according to official records. And we already know that the local government had been trying to cover it up from the get-go. The police were involved in it, like Mrs. Pinky said. But here's the thing. They did a whole report on this. They did it, I believe it was like in the early 2000s. And they went and investigated the records. They talked to witnesses who were there. They talked to the descendants of witnesses. And they were able to go block by block. Now, the thing is, there were 35 blocks that were destroyed by these bombs that they were dropping from planes and by them setting fires. There was way more than just 35 people killed in that. They came to an estimate of 300. So the number may not be exactly 300. It could be 322. It could be 297. It could be 250. It could be 200. Either way, that's a massacre. You killed hundreds of people. They just last year they found a mass grave, and they're still looking, because the thing is, not all these people got a burial like a regular funeral. That's why they don't have the death certificates and all the other records. A lot of those have been lost. They threw these bodies into mass graves. There are reports of it, and they found at least one of them that had 30 bodies in it. So you add that to 30 to 35, you've already got 65 now. A lot of those bodies they threw into the Arkansas River. We'll never find them. They're gone. So it is entirely plausible that up to 300 people died. And some of those were white too, because remember, this was a massacre, but it's not like black people weren't fighting back now. I mean, they had guns, they were fighting back, but they were outnumbered and they were outgunned. So yes, it is entirely plausible and very much likely that about 300 people died. But again, even if it's 200, I mean, is that acceptable? Does that make this whole thing a lie? The notion that it was just 35 people who died in that whole thing is absurd. He knows it. We all know it. Everybody knows it. All you have to do is a little bit of digging. Don't take my word for it. I mean, I looked at a report from NBC News. I looked at a report from The Nation. I looked at a report from the local government, the one that was done much later. That was probably more honest. The information is out there. He just didn't want to look for it, or he ignored it. Let's see what else we got. Candace and her ilk just trying to be like the left. Well, they use some of those tactics. What's up, Shaka Shakur? My brother. That's a good question. I wonder what their elders and family think about their talking points. I would wonder that too. Oh, Lord, here we go. Jeff, are you married to a black woman? Okay, first off, I'm not married. When I was married to a black woman. If I get married again, which I won't, it most likely will be to a black woman. I like black women. Black women are hot. Anyway, let's keep going. Julian, Jeff ain't married. Yeah, that's right. That's right. I'm not. All right. All right. What else we got? Anybody else got anything to say or any questions to ask? This is kind of fun. I should do these videos more often where I react to other people's videos. I see other people do it and it looks like fun. So this was my first time just breaking down an entire video. And it took me like an hour, and that video was only like 17 minutes long. I had a lot to say, but you guys had a lot to say too. So that's awesome. Chocolate for the win. Yes, definitely. TLG rubbish. Marriage is wonderful. 30 years strong. Well, congratulations, Queen. That's awesome. I'm glad about that. We need that. Doesn't work out for all of us, but I'm glad it worked out for you. I'm very happy for you. Oh yeah, they also still have yet to address their comments about Ahmaud Arbery and how the McMichaels did call him racist slurs. You know what? That trial's coming up, and it'll be very interesting to see how Conservative Inc. tries to spin this. We saw what they did with George Floyd, and I still believe that the vast majority of conservatives were on board with what with Derek Chauvin being punished. A lot of conservatives were outraged, and they still are. But the most loudest of them, they were the ones who were trying to say, oh no, kneeling on somebody's neck for 9 minutes had nothing to do with his death. And they actually wanted people to believe that. I don't believe that a lot of these people who were peddling that lie actually believed it. I just don't. I'm sorry. Like, and especially if you watch the trial, even if you could find some holes in the prosecution's argument, that case was strong. That was a strong case. And the defense, I think they did what they could, but it wasn't that compelling. And I did not believe, looking at it from a persuasion perspective, I did not believe that they were going to be able to convince even one juror that that knee had nothing to do with his death. However, with Ahmaud Arbery, this one's going to be harder for Conservative Inc. to spin. I'm interested to see what they're going to do. Are they going to ignore it? I don't think they're going to be able to ignore it, because you know that the left is going to exploit it. So they have to react. They have to react to what the left does, right? What they're going to do is, because they're going to follow what the defense attorney is going to do, just like they did in this case. The defense attorney, we already know what the defense strategy is. They've kind of already come out with it. They're going to bring up Ahmaud Arbery's past, and they're going to possibly argue that the McMichaels were justified in trying to perform a citizen's arrest. They're going to bring Ahmaud Arbery's, or they're going to try to bring Ahmaud Arbery's mental health into this. This is something that they're trying to get into evidence in preliminary hearings. The judge has not decided on that, as far as I know. But if the judge allows that in, they're going to try to use his history of mental illness, and they're going to try to pin it on that. They're going to try to justify the McMichaels chasing him down and causing the situation, and they're going to argue self-defense. That is the only thing they can do. I see no other defense that they can use for the McMichaels and William Roddy Bryan. Even when the whole thing went down, I saw a lot of the more, I can't say authoritarian because they weren't police officers, but more of the Sesame Street conservatives who think that the black guy is always wrong. They tried to use that defense. Oh, well, it was self-defense. He shouldn't have run at him, or he should have obeyed and stopped. There are a lot of stupid excuses that they're making, but I'm wondering if this backlash will be as big as it was for George Floyd. Will you have Tucker Carlson trying to justify what happened? I'm sure he weighed in when it did happen, but I'm not sure. I don't know what he said. But I don't know if conservative media is going to be as gung-ho about defending the McMichaels and Bryan, because it's going to be too hard. Then again, they did try to defend Derek Chauvin, but at least in that case, Floyd did have drugs in his system, so there was at least something that they could hone in on. In this case, there's not much. So yeah, I'm almost scared, but I'm very interested to see how they're going to play that. I can't remember what the trial date is supposed to be, but it's not that far away. It's just in a few months. I think either late summer or early fall, this thing's going to start. What else we got? Are you guys still talking about marriage? Julian, 10 years strong. Congratulations, brother. I'm proud of you. That's good stuff. To be fair, I think there are people like that on the left too. I actually grew up in a conservative home. Most black people are conservative. That's true. And yeah, I mean, all the stuff that I see about what the right does, the left does it too. It just looks different. They do it differently. And there are issues that the left is better on. Not necessarily in terms of policy, but in approach, they're better on it. And then there are issues where conservatives are better on it. Let's see. Nobody cared about Tony Timpa. He was white. I hate the double standard. I really do. You're right. They didn't care about Tony Timpa. They didn't care about Duncan Lump. They didn't care about Daniel Shaver. They didn't care about Ryan Whittaker. But conservatives didn't care about these people either. And I hate to say it. Conservative media only cares about Tony Timpa in that he was a way to highlight the hypocrisy of the left, and that is it. Other than that, they don't care about him. You didn't see any. And correct me if I'm wrong, but again, Daniel Shaver, Tony Timpa, Duncan Lem, Ryan Whittaker. Did you see any conservative influencers or people who are pretending to care about this? Did any of them try to organize a protest? Did they set up a GoFundMe? I did see a GoFundMe for a couple of these individuals, and I can't remember what. I didn't set it up, but I shared it. Were they complaining about it when it happened? Most weren't. I did. When Daniel Shaver went down, I was pissed. I wrote that up for Liberty Nation. I used what platform I had to at least draw attention to it. The activist media is never going to highlight these cases because they know that if white people see more of themselves getting killed by the police, that they'll actually start pushing for solutions. I'm not saying it's because they're racist. It's because we're tribal. I mean, it's just the way it's a human condition. If more white conservatives saw these cases happen, and let's say right-wing media actually highlighted it in a way that was honest, then you might see more people willing to come together. You might see people in MAGA hats and people with Black Lives Matter shirts working together. As a matter of fact, I know you would. Because you know who did care about Daniel Shaver's death? Black Lives Matter did. They demonstrated for him. They are supporting his family. They are doing things to support his family. I'm not sure what they're doing, but I read about it. With a couple of the others, same thing. Black Lives Matter, at the very least, made a statement. And at the very least, called for justice. Where do we see that on the right? We didn't see anybody calling for justice on the right. Very few people. Not that they weren't talking about them, but when they talked about them, it was always in the context of, why doesn't CNN care about these people? Who gives a fuck what CNN thinks? You do it. If you're Fox News, you shouldn't be complaining about a white person getting killed by police brutality. You shouldn't be complaining about CNN not covering it. You do it. You've got the platform. You raise money for his family. I'd be with you on that. I would stand shoulder to shoulder with you on that. But I know if I see a white guy get killed by the police unjustly, I will be one of the few people who will write about it and will try to make a big deal out of it. Like I said, Ashley Babbitt, I was reaming them for that. When that first came down, I was like, this was unfair. This was unjust. She should not be dead. Yes, what she was doing was wrong, but I'm not going to focus on what she was doing wrong as much as I'm going to focus on what was done to her, because she didn't kill anybody. The officer did. So this will only change when conservative media actually starts to take this stuff seriously. Right now, they don't really care if white people get unjustly killed by the police, and that's a fact. And I'm not saying everybody. I'm saying most. They're not going to raise a fuss about it. The only thing they will say, they will be more outraged at the fact that CNN doesn't cover it than they will about the fact that a police officer unjustly killed an American. And that is sad. That is sad as fuck. Oh, that's a good idea. Let's do a show on all of them. That's a good idea. Oh, yeah, Thaddeus Russell. He did interview Daniel Shaver's widow. I haven't listened to that yet, but I want to. He's been pushing that, actually. I respect the hell out of him. I already love Thaddeus Russell. But when I saw that, I was like, great. Highlight that. Because, and I can't remember who I was talking to about this. Again, What would happen if more white people saw how a lot of white people get treated? Even if they know that white people are less likely to get treated that way than black people, it's still wrong that it's happening to anybody. And if they see it happening to people who look like them, then it's more likely that solutions will be reached. The media does not want solutions. They want the problem to persist so that they can exploit it. Let's see. The right gets too caught up in sticking it to the left. Yeah, pretty much. TLG Conservative Inc. lives to counter what the liberals aren't doing. That's it. Yeah, but they're not going to bring forth any ideas. Jimmy Das, what's up, brother? One of my friends is BLM Seattle, and talking to him, I know I can fight alongside him and trust him over grifters for freedom. Pro 2A, pro limited government, pro police, not killing citizens. And that's BLM Seattle. Seattle is not exactly a bastion of right-wing thought now, is it? That's why I always differentiate between the local chapters and the global organization. There is a difference. There's a lot of Marxism in the local chapters too. I'm not going to deny that, but still, you've got regular people involved as well who just want to do something about police brutality. All right, so I think I'm going to cut it off there, guys. I appreciate you coming. Got a pretty good turnout for this one. But yeah, make sure you share this video. And if you haven't already subscribed, please hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. And you know what? Let me know what other videos you want me to go over. If there's some that you have in mind, maybe I'll pick and choose and see which ones to talk about. Or if there's other topics you want me to cover, let me know. But until next time, keep your minds free.